The Tar Heels keep flip-flopping between wins and losses. So the good news is they're going to win Saturday.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Isaac Shade. Welcome into this live postcast as we chat following Carolina's 86-79 loss at Syracuse on Tuesday. The Tar Heels fall to 19-6 overall, 11-3 in ACC play. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's always not as fun to not be celebrating as a win, but look, just as much as it's good to get together to celebrate, it's good to get together for what I like to call a therapy session, and that's exactly what we'll do. So if you're tuning in live on YouTube, welcome in. So glad that you're here. If you're listening later to this after the fact in the audio podcast form, we're glad you're here as well. My name is Isaac Shade, and I'm so glad to have you with us. Here's how we handle these live postcasts. I'll give you kind of four takeaways, quick takeaways. We're doing this about 15 minutes after the game has ended. We'll have an ad read, about four more takeaways, and then we'll get to some listener questions and comments that are in the live chat on YouTube. And then that'll be it for this. And then I'll go get ready and record the full episode for Wednesday morning, where we'll go even more in depth. All right, so that's how we do this. Again, welcome in. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community, we'd love to have you there. The link to that is in the show notes. All right, gang, let's start here. North Carolina, simply not enough stops defensively. Syracuse, in this game, shot 62.5%. For those of you watching, you can see the box score pulled up in real time over beside my shoulder there. 62.5% from Syracuse. Y'all get that into your head against a team that we thought, the Tar Heels, was one of the better and elite defenses in the nation. It's just not meant to be. In the first half, Syracuse shot 63%, and then in the second half, 61.9% to finish at that 62.5. They were 30 of 48 from the field, 8 of 17 from three. And so, I mean, good grief. The Tar Heels defense just simply could not and did not do enough. The biggest issue was the Syracuse backcourt. That is the trouble spot. And I talked about, like, I was on a Syracuse radio show earlier on Tuesday, and the host asked me, hey, what's each team need to do? I said, for Carolina, it's about establishing the interior and winning there. This needs to be a massive Armando Bacot game against the depleted Syracuse front line. For Syracuse, if they can win the backcourt battle, they win. And that's exactly what happened in this game. So not only was the defense in general not good enough, specifically Syracuse's backcourt went batty in this game. Judah Mintz, who had 21 in the first game, had 25 in this one. JJ Starling had 23. That means their starting backcourt combined for 48 points on a very efficient 17 of 26 from the floor. And look, this was one of those games, we haven't seen it often, but where Carolina's shorter backcourt of Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis was hurt by two starting guards who were both 6'4". And they pretty much did what they wanted at will. Thankfully, you get Seth Trimble back, but ultimately it didn't matter in this game. And so Carolina didn't do enough defensively overall, and Syracuse's backcourt won the day. All right, second thing I want to look at. North Carolina is just in flip-flop mode. They cannot get a winning streak restarted after the 10-game winning streak that they had from the Oklahoma game up through the game at Florida State. Since then, they won at Florida State, lost at Georgia Tech, beat Duke at home, lost to Clemson, won at Miami, and then lost this game. If you want to be a top 1-2 seed in the NCAA tournament, you have to figure out how to string together wins. And I joked about it off the top, but I mean, the good news is if this pattern keeps up, you're going to win at home against Virginia Tech on Saturday. But look, that's not what championship teams do. Speaking of Saturday, we're going to get the NCAA selection committee is going to release their top 16 reveal for the first time. I'm really curious to see where the Tar Heels at. I mean, just a week or two ago, it was like, hey, they're the third or fourth one seed overall right now. I don't know that you fall all the way outside of that 2 seed discussion right now. Again, there's more games to play, but Carolina might be down to a 3 seed right now. I'm curious to see what bracketologists have to say about that as things refresh. So Tar Heels, the reason I bring up this flip-floppiness is they've got to find consistency, got to find a way to string together multiple winning games. And they just did not do that at Syracuse on Tuesday night. You've now given up your ACC advantage. You've got to do something to turn this thing around. Thankfully, you play Virginia Tech Saturday, and then you get a week off to kind of heal up some aches and woes and things like that. You know, there was a point early in the second half where Armando legs were being treated. Elliot Cadeau had gotten poked in the eye, so he's getting some help over there. So, man, you need that break, but you got to beat Virginia Tech first. All right, number 3. It was another concerning close from North Carolina. Thankfully they pulled out the Miami win, but we talked about it on Monday's show, how they're down the stretch. Carolina had 4 turnovers. I think this was the last 3:45 of the Miami game. 4 turnovers, 0 of 2 from the floor, 3 of 6 from the free throw line. Thankfully, they made just enough plays to do it. Not so here. I haven't had time because we're so quick getting into this after the game to go through and look at all the numbers. But there were back-to-back-to-back turnovers that allowed Syracuse to build an 80-72 lead. Cormac Ryan had another one as Carolina was maybe making a little bit of a run again late. And so, you just cannot do that. The offensive inefficiency down the stretch of games lately, which I want to go a little bit more in depth in on Wednesday's full show. So I'm going to go dig into that a little deeper, is concerning right now to me. And we need to figure out what and why that is. But by the way, let me say, and maybe this is just me complaining coming off of a loss, but these end of game reviews, how many were there? Like 87 of them? It's too much. And like if we have to zoom in that far to see the ball maybe nick off of Harrison Ingram's pinky finger, I know you want to get the calls right, but my goodness, come on. Like, I get it. Armando pulled homie down by his jersey. You got to call a flagrant one there. I hear it and I understand it. But either you're going to call a flagrant one on Cormac Ryan or you're not. He came down. I know he got armed, but just make a call and let's go on. Anyway, there's that. Fourth thing in our first section here is Carolina's bench. We were very curious to see, coming off of Saturday when the Carolina bench scored exactly 1 point, that was a Zayden High free throw, what the Tar Heels would get from their bench in this one, looking for more production. And what's interesting is as you look at the box score, whether you're watching or whether you're just following along, every Tar Heel that played in this game scored. So, that you can take that and say, yay, okay, good. All 8 Tar Heels that played scored. But that's the thing. Only 8 Tar Heels played. There was no Paxton Wojcik in this game. There was no Zayden High in this game. Nothing. Didn't see the floor. And I know those guys aren't as effective as the other 8. The 8 that played or the 8 that you want out there. I hear that. But the 3 bench players that did play, in terms of minutes, 11 minutes for Seth Trimble, 9 minutes for Jalen Washington, 7 minutes from Jalen Withers. So that's a total of 27 minutes played by your bench out of 200. That's just not enough. Every starter played at least 30 minutes in this game. 30 for Armando Bacot, would have been more, but he was dealing with injuries. 31 for Elliot Cadeau, 33 for Ingram, 37 for RJ, and 40 for Cormac Ryan. That's why this team, to me, is struggling down the stretch of games. Remember, we talked about it for those of you who were with us on the Tuesday show. Carolina, I know they're young men, they're resilient, but when you have to go down to Miami over the weekend, come home for a day or two, and then come right back up all the way up to Syracuse, man, that takes a toll on your body. And so, in addition to playing all of these minutes, hard minutes, it just is a toll that is going to continue to only get worse. So you got to find rest for these young men, particularly in a game against a depleted team like Syracuse. Unfortunately for that, I mean, I really do hate it for them. They've just been losing guy after guy after guy. But you got to take advantage of that. Run them out the gym, run them out the dome, you know what I'm saying? And bring these guys in. If they're hurting or not helping your team, great. I get it. Get them off the floor, but at least give them a look. Give them a chance to have an opportunity to make a play. But none of that happened. And it just wasn't the scoring was fine. You had 1 point from Seth Trimble, 5 from Jalen Washington, 4 from Jalen Withers. And I would take more, but look, 10, whatever, great. Double-digit bench scoring. I just need to see more. All right, we got several things more that we want to discuss as we have our live postcast reaction, including talking about what an opposite game this was from Saturday, and yet Carolina still wasn't able to win. We're going to look at that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Hey, the wait is almost over, North Carolina. Great news. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Tar Heel state on March 11th. You'll finally be able to bet on all your favorite teams and all your favorite sports. With FanDuel, there's tons of ways for you to get in on the action. You can bet on everything from the money line to over-unders to which team will win the second Tobacco Road rivalry of this year, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can even pick which player will put up the next bucket and the one after that. See for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel goes live in North Carolina. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, folks, Isaac Shade here with you immediately following Carolina's loss, 79-86 at Syracuse on Tuesday night. We're following up with several things. We'll obviously have our full length show tomorrow on Wednesday, so make sure you check into that as well, where we go even into more depth, but these are just the immediate reactions. All right, so next thing, we want to do 4 more things, and then we'll get to the comments and questions and observations in the chat. This was an opposite game in terms of game script and game flow from Saturday. Remember, against Miami, the Tar Heels did a great job getting out to a lead, built a double-digit lead in each half, but the problem in that one was that Carolina allowed Miami to fight back and take a lead at the end of the first half, fight back in the second half, but Carolina just hung on by the hair of their chinny chin chin. In this game, it was the opposite. Syracuse in the first half got out to a double-digit lead pretty quick. It was 21-11, and they kept re-upping that. Carolina did a great job of fighting back, getting in it. Got up to, in fact, a 4-point lead. So you had a 14-point swing there in the first half. But then Syracuse was able to battle back and tie it up heading into halftime. And then they maintained that momentum going into the second half and built up. They couldn't get back to double digits, but they did get a 9-point lead. So again, Carolina has to fight back, and they do. Yet again, they get a lead. Carolina, though, in the second half, only a 1-point lead. I typed in my notes immediately at that moment. What's going to happen now? Can Carolina extend this, or have they had to extend so much energy catching back up with, not many bench players helping, that Syracuse is just now going to go on a run and polish this thing off? Well, Syracuse responds with a 5-0 run to get a 4-point lead back. Carolina is able to chip away here and there, but ultimately Syracuse just kept extending the lead, and Carolina was never able to do enough to get back in it. They should have, but they couldn't hang on to the ball. We already talked about those closing things that just weren't there. So a weird back and forth between these back-to-back road games. You get a lead and can't hold on. You allow the other team to take a big lead. You catch back up, but then you can't build out on it. Something's got to be fixed there. Carolina needs to be able to figure that out. All right. Secondly, on this back half of what we want to look at, we talked about the potential advantage that Syracuse had in the backcourt, which they did take advantage of. And something I've been talking a lot about heading into this game was that this needed to be a massive Armando Bacot game where he needed to touch the ball a lot, where he needed to be able to get a lot of touches, to be able to score. And that just wasn't there. So let me just give it to you big picture points of what it was. In the first game where Carolina obliterated Syracuse, the Tar Heels dominated the points in the paint. You ready for this? 58-32. Now, here's what's really funny or really sad and disappointing about that. Remember, 58-32 points in the paint, Carolina last time. This game, Tuesday night, both teams had exactly 32 points in the paint. So Syracuse did exactly what they did in the paint last time, but the Tar Heels were 26 points worse in the paint, or, had 26 fewer points. I don't know if you want to say worse, but fewer points in the paint. Why? They did not take enough advantage of getting the ball to Armando. I mean, there were multiple times when it looked like they could and should. Doing a great job. Cadeau was in the middle of the zone. We'll unpack that more on the full show on Wednesday. But Cadeau was operating well. There were a couple moments when he got it to Armando. And look, I know, hear me say, Armando missed some minutes being injured. He was a little bit gimpy even when he did come back in, but kudos to him. As always, he fought and fought and fought and did end up with a double-double, his fourth straight, which is the first time he's done that all season long. So kudos to Armando from just battling and fighting. But in a game when Armando Bacot should have had, I talked about, I believe on the show, somewhere like 10 to 15, with closer to 15 being what I'm looking for. Shot attempts, he had 9. And he was 5 for 9. Again, extremely efficient, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Man, that's actually eerily close to the first Syracuse game, right? Wasn't he 5 of 8 from the field and 4 of 4 from the free throw line? I'm going to check that in real time because I think that's almost an identical number. Armando Bacot, 6 of 8 and 4 of 4. So yeah, almost had the exact stat line shooting and free throws as he did in the first time, but it's not enough. Particularly true as you look at some of these other numbers. RJ Davis, 7 of 17, 4 of 11 from 3. Cormac Ryan, 6 of 14, 4 of 9 from 3. So I look, Cormac almost shot 50% from 3, almost shot 50% from the field. But all due respect to Cormac Ryan, I want to take about 4 of those 14 shots and give them to Armando. All due respect to RJ, I want to take 3 or 4 of those 17 shots and give them to Armando. Get him close into the rim. Or maybe even Harrison, who was making some really good decisions. 6 of 11 from the field himself. So it's just, I didn't like Carolina's shot selection all the time in this game. And again, didn't do enough to force the issue in the paint, where Armando had a big, big advantage. All right, third thing here on the back end, as a big part of that, let me say again, Carolina settled for too many three-point shots, just like they did on Saturday. And you might want to push back on me and say, Isaac, I'm looking at the three-point shots. You got it pulled up there. Carolina shot 44% from 3, 12 of 27. I hear you, and I hear that. But in a game where you have a massive interior advantage, you have to exploit that. And Carolina didn't. They just did not. And part of it was because, remember, we asked the question. Syracuse has been playing so much less zone this year, just 13% of the time. They talked about a lot on the broadcast. But in the first game against North Carolina, they went to that a lot. And part of that was because Carolina was just running away with the game. I think in this game, it was more about they're so depleted in terms of personnel that they're trying to save their energy. And Carolina fell for the trap, man. They went right to it, taking lots and lots and lots of threes. 27 of their, how many total shots did they take? 61 total shots. So just shy of half were threes. That to me is not the balance you're looking for. Because here's another part of that. One of the big staples of Carolina's offense this year is what? Say it with me, the free throw line. Let's look at the free throw line numbers together, shall we? North Carolina shot 81.8% from the free throw line. That is phenomenal and a percentage that has been missing of late, to be honest. But here's the problem. They only took 11 of them. So the percentage was there, but the attempts were not. To me, that is a clear sign of Carolina not knowing where their bread is buttered. It is getting to the free throw line over and over and over. You have to attack. Meanwhile, let's look at Syracuse's free throws. They were 18 of 25. That is where Carolina should be. A little bit higher percentage, like 20 of 25. But Syracuse did to Carolina what Carolina does to other teams, right? Carolina always wants to make more free throws than their opponents take. Syracuse, Carolina to Carolina in this one, making 18 free throws while Carolina only took 11. That's because, again, Carolina settled for threes. They were enticed to do so by the Syracuse zone, and they weren't committed enough to attacking and getting what they wanted. So there's that. So it just is what it is. Final thing I want to talk about before we get to your questions and observations there is the turnovers. Carolina did a much better job overall in this game with turnovers, right? We've been harping on the turnovers on the road, and the Tar Heels did much better in this game. Only 11 total turnovers. I'm very pleased with that, quite frankly. But here's what's interesting. You look at the first half and second half breakdown. Carolina had 6 turnovers in the first half, excuse me. That means they had 5 in the second half. And if you recall what I said earlier, 4 of those were in the closing. I think it's probably 3 minutes of the game. I'm not going to have to go back and look after the fact. But that means that while the majority of the second half was going on, Carolina only turned the ball over once and then 4 times in that closing stretch. Part of that, this is going to sound backwards from what I always harp on and preach. Part of that, to me, shows you that Carolina was not attacking enough, because the more you attack, the more you're probably going to get stripped or lose the ball here or there. So I can live with a couple turnovers in the course of the play, in the course of the action. And so that, to me, just that one turnover in the first 17 minutes of the second half is another sign that Carolina was not attacking well enough. So got to figure it out. So that's what we'll do. Carolina got to go back home, back to the drawing board, and see what happens and get ready for Virginia Tech coming to town on Saturday. Okay, what we're going to do now, I'm going to leave up the box score so you can see it, but I'm also going to go to our comments section to see what kind of comments, questions you have. I want to answer some of these and do some interacting with us. Derek Thiessen, I hope I'm saying your last name right. It might be Thiessen, where you don't say anyway, he says, I didn't see this coming from a veteran-led team. Derek, I am right with you on that. There were a couple possessions where I was really impressed with Carolina's veteran play, where they worked it and found what they needed, but it wasn't there consistently enough. That's the problem. I expect a veteran-laden team to come into this and say, look, we've lost 2 of our last 4 games. We've been flip-flopping. We have an opportunity now to string together our second win in a row and then get another one at home Saturday against Virginia Tech, and then get a week off to rest our weary legs. And they just didn't do that, the Tar Heels. And so there is something that has to be sorted out here. As Derek says, this is a veteran-led and a veteran-laden team who is getting Seth Trimble back. If I give you all that pregame, I'm feeling really good about this thing against a depleted and disheartened Syracuse team. But I cautioned every one of us. One of the pitfalls is that you splattered this team last time. And if you take your foot off the gas, even 1%, if you don't prepare enough, even 1%, it'll come back to bite you. And that's exactly what happened. Hey, just want to shout out Self again. Self says, Isaac, appreciate the shout out on the show this morning, man. Means a lot. Look, seriously, Self, it was a great question. I loved you bringing it up, and led to some good discussion. So thank you for bringing that. Debbie Barker says, and I do want to point this out. I said Carolina, kind of gives away their advantage in the ACC. But as you know, Virginia lost as well tonight. Debbie says, good thing Virginia loses tonight, so we're still in first place at the moment. Hold on to the tiebreaker over Duke. And so that's the fortunate thing. But again, Carolina keeps having this cushion and keeps giving it away. You have an opportunity tonight with Virginia losing to expand on this. But each time they gain a little bit of breathing room, they give it back. And look, I know that the season is long. I know there's 6 more regular season games to be played. So that's good and that's great. But right now, it just feels stuck in the muck, in the mire. I'm trying to react in the same way that I'm sure all of you are feeling right now. There is some good. Yes, absolutely. But there's a lot to be figured out right now down the stretch. Greg Clausen says Cormac shot so well, but also lost so many balls. Let's see how many of those 11 turnovers were belonged to Cormac Ryan. 5 of them. Woof. I thought it was several. Man, that's almost half of the 11 turnovers. Harrison had 3 of them. So between, Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram, that goes back to that veteran team conversation we were just having. That's 8 of your 11 turnovers. 1 for Elliot, 1 for RJ, 1 for Armando, none for anybody on the bench. Well done, Seth and the Jalen's. You love to see that. But man, Cormac, yeah, great call here. Man, I'm seeing some good, encouraging things in the chat. Kevin Ingram's talking about regroup and get a win on Saturday. Man, people talking about we got to finish this off. There is hope. I love that there's some hope from the fan base. Nintendo Nerd asked this question. Is it officially time to hit the panic button? Did this team peak too early? Let's take those individually. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button. It is time to hit the eyebrows raised, scratch your head, what's going on button. Because there are things to get figured out. But all is not lost. I don't think we're at that spot. I think this team did peak earlier, but I think also similar, think back to UConn last year. They had a massive non-conference run. And then in the stretch of like late January in the Big East, they lost like 5 of 6, worse even than what the Tar Heels are doing right now. And then they peaked into form down the stretch of the season. Carolina, it's a little bit later than that, but has an opportunity to follow a similar trajectory to what UConn did last year. But let's also say at the same time, this is why I've been harping on, this is why Coach Davis has been harping on, when you got that 10-game winning streak, if you're the Tar Heels, nothing has been truly accomplished. Because just let's go back 2 years ago to Coach Davis's first year. Just like the first 2/3 of the regular season felt kind of like, ugh, and then really turned it on about now. There has to be a line in the sand. So this is the flip of that. Great start to the year. And then these last, what is it now? Three losses in the last 5 games, right? With that back and forth flip-flop. Yeah, 3 losses in 5 games. At some point, there has to be a moment where you draw a line in the sand and say, all right, let's figure this thing out. This is not who we are playing to be right now, is not who we want to be. What does it take for us to get back to that? Let's get back to our roots. All right. So let's keep looking through this thing. Several things about the zone. We're going to talk more about the zone on the full show tomorrow, so just hold on for that. I want to take 1 or 2 more questions and then get us out of here tonight, because I know everyone's probably just wanting to drown their sorrows a little bit. Seeing some Cormac Ryan hate. No, get off of that. Now, as I said, there are things he needed to improve from what he did Tuesday night. But again, I'm saying this just like last week. There will not be a benching of Cormac Ryan. So just deal with that. Oh, Light Fam says it. Yeah, I've been talking about this a lot. 40 minutes, play 40 minutes. It's funny, when we think about 40 minutes, we often mean you start hot, but then you end weak. We talked about 40 minutes last week in saying that means every stretch of the game. 40 minutes here, or 4 minutes here, 4 minutes there, 10 minutes in the middle, whatever it is. You have to play every one of those chunks, every one of those sections, and it's difficult. Carolina is proving that they're having difficulty doing that. I think some of that is the lack of use of the bench. I think some of that is whether you lose focus for a little bit, take a couple possessions off, whatever's going on there. there's that. Michael Grooms is correcting me here, saying Wojcik played at the end of the game. I apologize. I missed that if he did get in. I didn't see it on the box score, and I didn't see him in watching the game. So thank you for correcting me there, Michael. We'll have to go back and look at that. Man, yeah, really, really tough. Brandon Wills says, Bacot didn't look in position to score or rebound. His stats weren't bad, but should have been a bigger impact. I think some of that, Brandon, if I can be honest, is him being a little hobbled in this game. I think some of that is, not quite being in the correct post position all the time. I think some of it is Carolina not handling against the zone very well in the ways they needed to. And so that kind of is what it is. As you look at the scoring, I was going to say Carolina once again has not scored 80 on the road this year, and they came so close for the first time, scoring 79 points. Oof, that's tough. All right, guys, I know there's more. I'm sure there's more to get through. I'm going to look through your questions and comments, and we'll chat about those. If there's anything critically impactful, we'll get to those on the full show on Wednesday. But I've hung in with you about 30 minutes, and I know you got other things you probably want to get to. Thank you for joining me, as always, for a therapy session. But let's be done for this one for tonight. If you're listening back later, thank you for tuning in as well. We're so glad that you've been here with us. Folks, I want to remind you, very seriously, I mean this. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. There will be a sunshine tomorrow. There will be lots of wins ahead. There are 6 games left in the regular season. Plenty of time to turn this thing around. As a reminder, all the long road travel is done. You now have 4 games at home and 2 shorter road trips. That's all that's left in the regular season. Regroup, refocus, and let's kill this thing down the stretch. You all with me? I know you are. All right, we'll talk to you again on tomorrow's full show on Wednesday. Thursday, Coach Rob will join me. Make sure you're tuned in for that. And then on Friday's show, Coach Pat Kilby will join me to get us ready for Virginia Tech. Speaking of which, I've got some travel on Saturday immediately after the Virginia Tech game, so we're not going to have a live postcast. So just mark that in your brain right now. All right, we'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.